in a building, overlooking the entire scene.
Right.
How do you finally leave? What do they finally say to you?
They kept talking to me and telling me, I told them what I had seen and what I'd heard, and they said, no, you didn't. You only heard 3 shots. And I kept saying differently, and they said, no, you didn't. And you would be very wise to not leave this room and say that ever again.
Did you feel?
Do not repeat it.
So did you feel that you were in fear if you?
I definitely was in fear.
Did you feel intimidated?
I felt intimidated and completely traumatized.
Did you go to the Warren Commission when they were investigating months later?
Yes, I did, and I told them, but they didn't accept my story then.
What do you mean they didn't accept it? Who did you tell?
I told the same story.
That you just told us?
Yes, but they told me...
Did you tell it to Arlen Specter, who's now the senator from Pennsylvania?
Yes, I did. But they told me I did not hear this, I did not see this.
What appeared in the Warren Commission report about your story?
Right. Well, he just told me that all they put in there was 4 to 6 shots, but everything about the Warren Commission statement was a lie from the very beginning, where they said they'd interviewed me at the post office building, when in reality I was the only non-medical personnel interviewed at Parkland Hospital.
And have you ever felt that because for mysterious reasons, one witness after another died through coincidence or anything else? Did you ever live in fear of your life?
Oh, I'd read these accounts in the paper, and then when Jim Garrison's men came to subpoena me to go to New Orleans, they told me, when I finally said, I just can't go, I have 2 children to raise, they said, well, did you know you're one of 3 witnesses left alive? And I said, and that's one reason I want to stay alive.
So now, why now? Can you come forward and tell us the story?
My children are grown. Hopefully, in telling this and with the advent of videotape and so forth, I can tell it to enough people that if T. Hill is gone, everyone can know the truth.
Okay. Cyril Wecht, the first non-government pathologist to examine the medical evidence on the Kennedy assassination. He did that years ago when a congressional committee looked into the commission report and all of the theories involved in the Kennedy assassination. No conspiracy. That's the Warren Commission report, Dr. Wecht.
Well, that, of course, is utter scientific nonsense, total fiction. There's no question about the fact that there was a conspiracy. You see, the sole assassin conclusion is predicated upon the single shooter. And if you don't have a single shooter with a single bullet theory, then you've got to have 2 people at least or more shooting. A single bullet theory, which has that same bullet going through Kennedy and then through Connolly's chest and through Connolly's wrist and into Connolly's thigh and then falling out on the stretcher, being pristine, undamaged, no deformity, only 1% of the total weight lost after having traversed these 4 anatomical locations in 2 human beings. That is absolutely impossible. There's never been a bullet like that. I've challenged my colleagues repeatedly to come up with one bullet like that from one other case in their files, and nobody has ever come up with it. The Warren Commission had an experiment done at the Edgewood Army Arsenal in Maryland to show this. They shot through goat carcasses to simulate Governor Connolly's rib fracture. They shot through human cadavers to simulate the wrist fracture in Governor Connolly. All those bullets, Maury, show significant deformity. They won't repeat that experiment. I've challenged them, dared them, begged them, pleaded with them, told them I'd pay for it. They will not repeat that experiment.
You have examined something that I think no one else has. The brain of President Kennedy.
No, I did not examine it. It was I who first discovered that the brain was missing. It was I who told Fred Graham of the New York Times, which was the big story on August 26, 1972, that the president's brain, microscopic tissue slides, and chromochromes of the internal chest wounds, which had been logged in April of 65, and when they did an inventory at the end of October 66, were no longer there. But it took until 72, when I was there, to show...
Why is that important?
Oh, because the head wounds are extremely important to determine whether or not shots came from the right front. And the brain would tell us that. We examined the brain. You see, the brain was not buried with the body. There was a supplemental examination 2 weeks later on December 6th.
And there were all kinds of things that went on during the autopsy that were very strange.
Well, yeah, what was strange to begin with was the fact that the autopsy on the President of the United States, dead as a result of gunshot fire, was being performed by people who had never done medical legal autopsies in their entire professional careers. That was just for openers.
We'll be back in a moment after this.
I become swear that
talking with Jean Hill, perhaps the closest eyewitness to the Kennedy assassination. She says that she relives that moment every day. And Dr. Cyril Wecht, a forensic specialist who discovered that the president's brain was missing from the National Archives. You were both technical advisors on Oliver Stone's film, about to be released next month. Jean, what was it like seeing you recreated?
Oh, it was great to meet Kevin Costner and Oliver Stone. But I have to tell you, Maury, that when I went down on the set the day that they were doing the motorcade, and I was on the hill overlooking the place where I'd been standing, and there was the girl in the red raincoat, and the limousine was coming around, the crowds were cheering, and I wanted to start screaming, stop it, don't kill him. And
you thought you
the shots rang out, and it was horrifying. It was just horrifying. And someone ran up to me and says, "What's wrong?" Because I was standing there just drowning in tears because it was so real. It was just relived.
Why are we so obsessed, Doctor?
Kennedy was the most charismatic political figure that we've had, not only in that era, but since the United States was born as a nation. He was powerful, he was charismatic, he had a beautiful family. The Kennedys were the closest to royalty that the United States has had since George Washington. The manner in which he was brutally assassinated, this young dynamic leader, this husband, this father, and this continues to obsess us.
I think
and young people today who weren't even born.
comes from the fact that I think we all feel violated by that act.
Yes, and also we feel frustrated in learning the truth, Maury. That's a big part of it too.
Jean, I'm curious as to how vivid is your memory as to the faces of the two men that were taking you and the men in the room? Because the reason I ask this question is, why were there not any sketches or etches put together of the faces of the people that you may or may not have seen? They obviously, if it was a conspiracy, had to be somebody.
Well, but you see, the government never did tell us it was a conspiracy. We had the government's point of view.
And what did you think? You were nuts? I mean, did you think...
They told me I was.
But I mean, today, could you describe, I mean, can you remember the faces?
I have been talking to a sketch artist, and we're going to try to do that.
Because this is beginning to gain momentum again.
Right.
Another opening up of the assassination and the so-called conspiracy theories.
Jean, has Jacqueline Kennedy ever spoken up about hearing more than the 3 shots?
No.
She has never
I don't think
spoken
she's
up.
spoken up at all.
Do you know why?
No, I surely don't.
Well, and there's also a lot of the information, as I understand it, Doctor, that came about that would buttress a conspiracy theory, that had to go through the United States Attorney General at the time, and that was Robert F. Kennedy. And he did not push for any of this to be opened up, did he?
Materials still remain locked up, Maury, and will not be released until the year 2039. FBI and CIA files.
Yes.
Well, today, do you still think that it was all a setup that President Kennedy got killed?
Oh, there's no question.
It was a setup, but who?
Well,
Which theory do you go with? Do you go with the mafia? Do you go with the Cubans? Was it the Russians? Was it the right-wing Texans? Was it...
Maury, let me say this, while everybody's entitled to their own thoughts, both the government and all of the assassination critics who have spent countless hours and years, nobody has ever come up with anything to incriminate the Russians or the Cubans or Lyndon Johnson or so on. This was a domestic plot. It came from the CIA, and it used the Carlos Marcello mafia family out of New Orleans to execute a lot of things, including, most importantly, the killing of Lee Harvey Oswald by Jack Ruby. That was essential, that there never be a trial. That was key.
We'll be back in a moment after this.
I was 19 when this happened, and when you're 19 years old, everything is very black and white. And like you said, they were royalty to me, and I wept. I can still remember weeping and weeping through the funeral. I'm sorry now that I'm about his age that the Kennedys have become gray, and that we are being so lambasted with the grays of them. I would have preferred to leave the memory as pure as I remember it when I was 19.
Yeah. And a lot of us don't. We want it back, and you're trying to jumpstart it again. I thank you very much, Jean Hill, for telling us your story for the first time. And Dr. Wecht, you've been into this now for a long time, and maybe finally the fruits of your efforts will be born. I thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, it was 28 years ago, but just like many of you, it is so vivid in my mind. It is so vivid in all our minds, and let's hope that we find out the truth in our lifetime. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Until next time, America.
Coming up next on News 4 Tech.